Greetings students, my name is Shivam Raj. I'm your mentor for English Literature at UGC, at Study Capital for UGC Net, and you're watching me on Study Capital's YouTube channel. Uh, I've come up with a series on post-colonial terms where I'll do about 4 to 5 videos and we'll discuss some key terms, some key terms which sort of fall between the crevices, which you don't find in either M.H. Abrams or Cudden. But I promise you'll see these words every now and then in your UGC Net exam papers, and at times in surprisingly in CUET PG also. Okay, so I've compiled a list of all of these key terms, and today we are going to discuss those. And this video is specifically important for those people who are preparing for UGC Net, and the exam is just around the corner. So this will help you not just revise those key terms and probably acquaint you with these new key terms for the first time, and also with some of the literary examples that I'll give you, help you revise those literary examples, those literary works. So with these prefatory words, let's get cracking. Okay, so first of all, I'd like to discuss or like to disperse a few myths about the differences between post-colonial without the hyphen and post-colonial with the hyphen. So here, as you can see, there's no hyphen between post and colonial. It's just one long word, post-colonial, right? And you probably would have come across the other variants or the other variation of this word as post hyphen post hyphen colonial. So what do you reckon is the difference between this term and this term, right? They both seem probably the same prima facie. There doesn't appear to be much difference except this little hyphen here. So this little hyphen carries a lot of weight. Okay, this represents the temporal quality. Okay, and here there's no hyphen. This represents a sort of a theoretical underpinning, or it has theoretical framework. Okay, and this carries legacies of colonialism. So to break down all of this, imagine, for example, if you see the use of the word post-colonial, this one with the hyphen, post-colonial economic policies. Okay, then that probably what that is getting at is post 1947. So it has a temporal quality, temporal as in relating to time. Okay, so if there's a hyphen, it has to do with time. So when 1947, when colonialism ends, and when we get to hold the reins of the country, that is the end of the colonialism. So that is post colonialism, post 1947. Whereas here, where there's no hyphen, there's no sense or connotation of any temporality or anything to do with time. Okay, it simply has to mean with the legacies of colonialism, as if you will. Okay, for example, let's say the power relations that exist between India and Pakistan. Okay, or the creation of Pakistan itself. Okay, or for example, the relations that exist between Australia and England. Okay, or New Zealand and Australia, right? These power relations, or they exist because of the colonial influence. Had the Brits not colonized these countries, okay, the relations today between these countries would have been very different. Okay, or for example, that's one. Okay, so relations between countries, global policies, that is affected by colonialism. So even though colonialism ended in 1947, its effect still exists today and shape global policies and global power relations. Okay, so not just power relations, then point number 2, it also shapes us. So my identity, okay, it shapes my identity as an Indian man. It shapes your identity as an maybe, for example, if you're American, as an American, if you're Chinese, as a Chinese. Okay, okay, as an Australian, anybody. Okay, so these identities that we have, our nationalities, that is shaped by our colonial experiences, even though it ended way before I was born. Okay, or even before my father or my mother were born. Okay, but it's still even today shapes my identity, how I still think about pronouncing a certain word a certain way, because I don't want to appear in a particular way. That is still, the colonial hangover is still there. Okay, I'm not saying that you should not be able to pronounce a word in a way that is considered to be largely the standard way, but I'm just giving an example to illustrate the point. Okay, so the legacy of colonialism that still carries heft today. Okay, and the theoretical underpinnings and the superstitions, okay, and the perception that you have about other countries or other countries have about you. So for example, Indians as being stinky, that we smell, right, and that we eat spicy food, that India is a place of snake charmers, is land of snake charmers, mysterious, okay, all of these ideas, okay, they are in a way because of our colonial experiences and how the word got out through Brits, that okay, this is how Indians are, okay. So all of these ideas, and the theoretical terms and the theoretical framework that comes under the section, under the rubric of post-colonial, uh, comes under this heading, okay, without the hyphen. So this is post-colonial. It has to do with theoretical concepts, theoretical framework, the legacies, and the in a broad way, broadly speaking, the effects of colonialism, okay. So the effects of colonialism that exist today, this signifies that, without the hyphen, post-colonialism, and with the hyphen, it has a sort of a temporal quality. So post 1947, so everything to do with date or time is signified through this hyphen that exists between post and colonialism. Okay, moving on. Okay, so this is the first term that we are going to discuss, and I bet most of you would not have probably heard of this term before, Manichean allegory. But what I can also bet against, or bet for rather, is that you'll probably come across either this word or one of the subsequent words that we're going to discuss in one of the papers, maybe in one of the past papers, not just of NET, but for maybe WB set or MP set, or maybe in subsequent forthcoming exams. And these are terms which sort of fall under the crevices, which sort of get left behind, which are not either here or there, okay, unless you study very deeply. So I have had to dig very deep to find many of these words. I have to scour through many of the previous question papers and theoretical books and literate terminology books, all of that, okay. So and this will help you boost up your examination preparation, because I'm going to be discussing a lot of literary terms, also a lot of literary examples also. So to start things off, Manichean allegory, okay. So this was obviously, if we first have to talk about how it originates, how it comes into existence. So it's a very old word. It goes back to 3rd century, okay, and it has to do with religion, which was called, or the philosophy of rather, Manicheanism. And this philosophy was sort of rather simplistic or reductionist, okay, if I may say so. So either things are very good or things are absolute worst, the pits of it, okay. So either things are going crazy good, or they are the absolute worst. So either it is sunshine, day, rainbow, temperature at 25 degrees Celsius, everything happy, balloons, rainbow in the sky, everybody's laughing, children running around. So either this or everything dark, bleak, raining, mud, people crying, death all around, okay. So there's no in between. There can't be a dull day, right? There has to be absolute wonderful day, everybody laughing, joking around, eating lunches on beaches, having picnics, okay. Either that or everybody crying in the pits, in the gutter, blood flowing, everybody crying, pulling their heads out, pulling their hair out, okay. So there's no in between, there's no continuum. It can't be like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. No, either one or not even one, either 0, okay, either 0 absolute worst or 10 absolute best. So either good or bad, either white or black, okay. So this is the Manichean philosophy, okay, Manichean allegory. Now how does this come into post-colonial terms? Why am I talking about in a post-colonial terms lecture or a series about post-colonial terms? How does this figure here, right? Okay, so Manichean allegory was used by and has been used by colonizers all over the world, because just for one purpose. Because imagine for a second, you're a colonizer, you land on the shores of a new country, you don't know the language, you don't know their gods, right? How do you convince them, okay, that you are the best, that they need to obey you, right? You make everything about you. So what are you? If you are a colonizer in the 16th century, you are white, right? So you make everything about your skin color. So if white is good, black has to be absolute worst, right? And there's no knowledge, there's no understanding, there's no wisdom, okay. Things are either good or things are bad, right? There's no understanding, there's no two people sitting down and hashing things out, right? Either you the hero or you the villain, right? So everything that was white, that became good. Everything that was black, that became evil, right? So for example, let's take the example of Heart of Darkness. So in Heart of Darkness by Conrad, you see how the Africans are portrayed as savages. Okay, uh, and so that also plays into the into Manichean allegory. So black are absolute savages, so black people are absolute savages, and it's the white people's duty to reform them, to civilize them. And white people are benevolent, Africans are malevolent, right? So either benevolent or malevolent. There's no good, okayish. There's no continuum of things, either this or this. Okay, so this plays into the hands of colonizers if they want to villainize the colonized people. For example, Prospero, if Prospero wants to absolutely villainize Caliban, okay, so he's going to use Manichean allegory, right? He's going to make himself the god, make himself the magical man with with everything good in him, right? And Caliban has to be a savage. He's described as a creature, right? You don't talk about good things, good people as creatures. You don't talk about Mandela or Gandhi or Ambedkar as creatures, right? You talk about creatures. You say the word, you utter the word creature when you're talking about something very reprehensible, right? So when Caliban is talked in terms of creature as savage, this is the Manichean allegory playing out, right? So he's the savage, he's the creature, and Prospero automatically, without any effort, if one is so downgraded, if one of the binary, okay, one element of the binary is so downgraded, the other hasn't got to do anything, okay, it automatically becomes better, right? If one person if you're in a room with a murderer, if you're in a room with a rapist, you automatically become the best thing that ever there is, right? Because the other person is so bad. In the same way, Manichean allegory plays out. If Caliban becomes the absolute pits of human existence, not even human, he becomes a creature, right? Then automatically Prospero, without even doing anything, and I'd go as far as to say that even despite doing bad things, he becomes, in comparison to Caliban, the absolute best, right? So this is how Manichean allegory plays out. And this binary plays into how Africans, Indians, colonized people all over the world, not just by Brits but by Portuguese, by Dutch, have been subjugated. Okay, so this is the Manichean allegory. For literary examples, you can look at Heart of Darkness by Conrad. Okay, then you can look at probably at something like E.M. Foster's Passage to India, right? It's Dr. Aziz's words versus Adele Quested, right? And who is Aziz? He's a brown man. He's a Muslim. Okay, so what's his word? Has he got a chance against the white noble lady Adela Quested? He hasn't got a chance in the whole world, right? So this is how the Manichean allegory plays out, and this is a very crucial terminology in post-colonial studies, right? So with Manichean allegory out of the way, we'll look at some of the other key terms. Okay, so next up is liminality. Now, liminality, it originated from anthropology. Okay, there was a theorist called Arnold van Gennep. Okay, Arnold van Gennep, and he talked about liminality, and then it was further talked about by Victor Turner, and then by Homi Bhabha and a host of other people. Now, liminality is that existence which is in between, right? So it's neither here nor there, but in between. So just to illustrate the point, then I'll go into literary examples and how it plays out in literary theory and post-colonial terms. I'll give you a very simple example. I suspect most of you would have seen the cartoon Doraemon. Okay, there's this anywhere door in Doraemon. Okay, so imagine, if you will, for a second, this is the the anywhere door. I am here in the studio. I enter the anywhere door and I'm outside the studio, or maybe let's say I'm in New York. Okay, so this position that I'm here right now in the studio of Study Capital, this is position number 1. This anywhere door of Doraemon, which I begin to enter, that is position number 2. That is within the frames of the the door. Then as soon as I or maybe Nobita enters the door, he gets outside gets out to some other place, at maybe Sunyo's house, or in my case maybe New York or Los Angeles, or wherever you may like. Okay, so this position where I am right now, this is the first position. Then the second, the door frame, the Doraemon's door, that is That is the second position. Then the other place which I go out to, step out to. Now this door frame, this Doraemon's door, okay, through which I enter, that is the space of liminality. That is a space of uncertainty, because you don't know how it happens, right? For example, I am here in the studio, or let's say Nobita is in his house with Doraemon. Doraemon pops open his anywhere door. Nobita enters the door in his own house along with Doraemon. He steps out at Sunio's house. Now, do you have any idea what happens in between the door? No. So that is a state, that is a stage, that is an area of darkness, of uncertainty, of ambiguity. So you don't know what's happening within the door frame, right? This was just an example. I'll illustrate this with another example. I'll take this example from popular culture, then I'll go to literary examples. Most of you would have seen this movie called Lakshya, starring Hrithik Roshan, then Amitabh Bachchan, and a host of other people, Preeti Zinta and other people. Okay, right. So I'll take this example and illustrate with the help of this example. So Hrithik Roshan, if you've seen the movie, you'll find, and if you do see the movie, you'll find that Hrithik Roshan is a very lazy, layabout kind of person. Okay, he has no aim or lakshya, as Preeti Zinta said. Okay, so in his earlier stage, when he has no aim, when he has no lakshya, okay, he stays in his father's house. He eats, he roams. He doesn't study. He doesn't, work towards any purpose, anything in his life. That is his original state. That is where he is. Okay. Then he decides to join army, right? So he decides to join army. He applies for the army. Goes into the army. Then is training to become a soldier, right? So the first stage where he was in his house, sitting about, laying about. Okay, that was the stage of separation. That was the first stage. So to enter the army, he had to be separated from his earlier social standing, from his earlier social status as a layabout, as a rich man's son. Okay, that was his earlier stage. So he had to be separated, plucked out, right? Plucked out from that family of his, from his rich family of his, from his layabout life, from his girlfriend, from his friends, rich friends, right? Then he had to be put into this liminal stage, the second stage, where he has to go through rigorous training to become a soldier. Now, in the second stage, which is the liminal stage, mind you, there's uncertainty. He might or might not become a soldier. We don't know, right? Because not everybody who goes into the army to train to become a soldier becomes a soldier, right? Many people drop out, many people are refused, right? Some manage to excel and they become a soldier, right? So this is a stage of uncertainty. You don't know what is going to happen. You may become a soldier, you may not become a soldier, right? So it's a stage of uncertainty. You are not either here or there. You're not from your earlier rich background, because you're in the army. So you have to eat 2 square meals, whatever they offer you. You have to shave your head off, right? You can't wear rich man's clothes, right? So you're not in your former social setting. Neither are you in the future setting where you become a decorated officer. So as a recruit, as a training recruit, you are in a middle space. Okay, a space of uncertainty. Then after the liminal stage comes the stage of reintegration. So when you step out of the army and you manage to become an officer or a soldier, then you're further reintegrated into a society. Then you become a new soldier, then you have a new family. Apart from the family that you had, your biological family, you have a host of friends, new friends, okay, that you found and that you've made through your hard work, and you've have a host of seniors, elders, officers that you look up to. So that is your reintegration into the society as a new man, right? So these are the 3 stages which are called the rites of passages. First is separation, when you're plugged out, when Hrithik Roshan is plugged out of his old former setting of rich man's house, rich man's son, a layabout. Then the stage of liminality, where he's working hard to achieve something, to become something. He may become something, he may not become something. So that's a stage of uncertainty, ambiguity. Then later, when he becomes something, when he makes something of himself, when he becomes a soldier, when he becomes an officer, he's further reintegrated into society, and he rejoins the society. So these are the 3 stages. Now you may ask, how is liminality has to do with anything with literary theory? So now liminality, especially in post-colonial terms, has to do with this in-between space. We're not either here, not there. Okay, it's a state of transition, right? So when Hrithik Roshan is in the army, he's in a state of transition, right? He's transitioning to become something. Okay, he was a layabout, and he's trying to become a well-disciplined soldier or an officer. But in the army, when he's preparing, when he's a recruit, that's a stage of that's a stage of transition. So imagine the army as a tunnel. Okay, so you step into the tunnel, and you after you enter the tunnel and you step out of it, you become a different person. And similarly, with the example of Doraemon's Anywhere door, you step into the door. You're from Nobita. You're at Nobita's house, and when you step out of it, you're at Sunio's house. So there's a transition that happens in between, and during the transition, there's uncertainty, there's flux. Okay, you're not sure about things. Now, in the context of post-colonial framework, this would be represented as something of an experience of, for example, let's take my example. Okay, so I have my own native indigenous upbringing, right, and my ideals. So, for example, I look at probably something like Gandhi, Nehru, Ambedkar, Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel. Okay, these people. Then, because Britain has ruled India, we are products of colonialism. I'm also probably going to look at, in one way or the other, maybe at Attlee, Churchill. Maybe I'm going to read Kingsley Amis. I'm going to read Kipling, right? And the best example is that I'm teaching English literature. I am from India. Okay, I am right now in Varanasi at Study Capital's studio, and I'm talking about all of these things, and most of these things that I teach are British, right? So my existence is a liminal existence in a way, right? If you can look at it through that lens, that I am caught in between, in whirlwinds between my indigenous identity and a British identity. I'm neither here nor there. I'm a sort of I lie in between. But even but in case of for example, somebody who goes to Britain and goes to America and lives there, then this quality or this identity is going to be much more in a flux, because then he speaks English all the time. He or she speaks English all the time. He or she eats English food all the time. Okay, meets these English people all the time. But those English people are not going to be accepting of the Indian man, right? Oh, and they are going to probably have some prejudice against that Indian man or the Indian woman, that maybe he or she stinks, or maybe he or she comes from a land of snake charmers, right? So that is the liminal space. From literary examples, we can take again the example of Caliban. Imagine Caliban when he says that this land is mine, and my mother's Sycorax land this is. Okay, I'm paraphrasing, but these are the sentiments of Caliban. He's asserting his native identity, his indigenous identity, right? That is his native indigenous identity. But then there are other lines when he says, you taught me the tongue, and I profit on it, and I curse you for it. Okay, something along those lines. Okay, right. Then that is his, that is the identity that is subsumed from Prospero, the European civilizing mission. Okay, and is using whatever Prospero's abused him with, to his own advantage. But then he's in a state of flux, right? So that is the idea of liminality. You start to think of yourself as the colonizer, okay, but you're not really the colonizer, you're the colonized, and you're sort of become detached with the colonized identity and sort of move towards the colonizer attitude. Then you again come back, so you're constantly in a flux. So at times you'll find a man living in, or a woman living in Britain, constantly moving towards the British identity and then recoiling from it. Okay, going back to the native identity, going to being very happy when the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi goes there. Okay, so you assert that identity. You might not even like Narendra Modi, but the fact that he's Indian and he's your Prime Minister, you go to see him, or you chat about him, even though you might not like him. But then at other times you'll feel proud about England winning the World Cup, right? So this is the state of liminality. We are neither here nor here, in a state of uncertainty, because you don't know, either you're British or you're Indian, either you're the colonizer or the colonized, right? So you're in a state of flux, in a state of ambiguity. I hope this long discussion makes it clear. As I've written it here, the liminal space represents a zone of ambiguity and potential for new cultural identities. Okay, so also point to be noted, this is not always to be degraded or deplored. This at times can be a celebratory thing, that you could, a liminal space may also present some opportunities. For example, I gave you the example of Hrithik Roshan. When he joins the army, there's the opportunity to become an officer, right? So not everything is bad. Not everything is the Manichean allegory that we spoke about earlier. So it presents itself with opportunities also. Okay, then re-orientalism. Re-orientalism, to understand re-orientalism, we have to go back to Orientalism. Orientalism has to do with everything that is characteristic of the Orient. Okay, so what is characteristic of the Orient? Okay, So we stink, obviously. That's the major perception out there. And we eat spicy food, okay, and we are land of snake charmers, okay. But are we really these all of these things? No. So how do we get associated with these things? Because these things are constructed, and they are constructed by the colonizer, right? So the colonizer has made us this way, that we stink, of, our breath stink, that we stink of garlic, that everything that we eat is spicy, right? So it's a construction. So Orientalism is a construction. There's no one place called the Orient. It's nothing but a construction. And re-orientalism should have been, something that, could have fought against this Orientalism, this idea that we are this place. But unfortunately, re-orientalism is the absolute opposite of this. Re-orientalism is a term that was coined very recently in 2007. It was coined by this theorist called Lisa Lau. Now, what used to happen that earlier, people from the West used to, stereotype us in a particular, that we stink of, our breath stinks, we, eat spicy food, land of snake charmers, all of that, right? But now some writers, rather unknowingly at times, unwittingly at times, but portray India as this, this land of poverty-stricken land of, squalor. For example, if you read Arvind Adiga's The White Tiger, you'll see his portrayal, how Balram Halwai writes to Wen Jiabo, the Chinese premier, and he describes his life, how he became this mega giant, corporate tycoon, okay. And he describes how India is poverty stricken, and which I'm not saying is wrong, okay, but wittingly or unwittingly, this plays into this idea of re-orientalism, that Indian people of Indian diaspora themselves re-orientalizing themselves, orientalizing as in making themselves orient, making themselves, exotic, right? Orientalism has to do with the ideas like exoticization. For example, we are exoticized. We are the land of the spiritual sadhus and the babas, right? Land of the mystics, right? Land of poverty, land of spices, right? Everything mysterious. So that exoticism, okay. So at times our Indian writers are also guilty of that, or writers of, Orient all over, not just India, Pakistan, China, Japan, all of these places also, they play into this idea of re-orientalism when they talk about our culture in a way that sort of essentializes or stereotypes us. So that is re-orientalism. It was coined by Lisa Lau. Okay, moving on. Okay, so these are the examples. For example, I gave the example of Arvind Adiga. You can look at example of V.S. Naipaul's A Bend in the River also. So the same thing happens there. Now V.S. Naipaul has been criticized a lot for his portrayal of Africans. So this again plays into the hand of, the colonizer, right? Because it, offers legitimacy to their portrayal and what they are saying. Okay, essentialism. I think I used the term essentialism unwittingly, I think a few minutes before, without rather explaining it. But what essentialism means, right, is you can gauge what it means from here. SN, okay. Had it been CE, essence. Essence, okay. So essence of something, okay. Okay, so for example, what is the essence of a strawberry ice cream? It's sweet, right? It's sweet. What's the essence of chili? It stings. It's hot, right? Okay. So what's the essence of wood? It taps. What's the essence of skin? There's a certain feel. What's the essence of wool? Okay. So the most prominent quality of a thing, right? What's the essence of let's say this board? It makes sound when I tap it, okay. So there are many qualities. It's even, I can write things on it. There are things that are already written. I can teach you through it, right, through this board. But when I tap it, it makes sound. That's the essence of it, right? I know that's ridiculous, but that is what essence actually means, right? The essence of it. What's the essence of spice, right? It's hot. What's the essence of chocolate ice cream? It's sweet, right? So this is the essence. Now we at times essentialize people, and that is called essentialism. So we essentialize people. So for example, we say that all black people are muscular. You may have seen a movie or two where you see the black character as being very tall, as being very muscular, okay, and you think by watching a couple of people that all of these people are muscular. There may be people like, what's that black scientist? I forget the name of some Tyson. Okay, okay, he might not be as muscular, right? Nelson Mandela might not be the most muscular guy ever, right? He goes against that stereotype completely. He's at the polar opposite of, muscular tall guy, Nelson Mandela. But when we talk of black people in popular culture, in your imagination, you're going to think of black people as tall and masculine, right? If I ask you to imagine, for example, Chinese people, you're probably going to imagine Chinese people as short, stubby people. Okay, probably very thin, right? And when I ask you to imagine what black people are going to look like, you're going to imagine them as tall, broad, with shoulders back, right? But not all black people are going to be like that. Not all Chinese people are going to be short and stout, right? Okay, but this is what essentialism means, and this is a very important tool. Now, all of these ideas that we're discussing, they play to the colonizer, right? These are all tools. These are all their weapons. One is AK-47, another is a weapon, another is a sword, then another is a is a bomb, right? These are all tools. So essentialism is a tool, right? So when they essentialize, for example, if they've essentialized the whole black population of Africa as being lusty, right? They are very promiscuous. They only go for sex, right? So this is the idea about black population Africa, that they've essentialized through literature, through songs, through movies, right? So when you think of a black person, you think like that he must be very lusty. When you think of a white person, I give you the example of James Mill's work, The British History of India. So in those times when people didn't travel as much, not many people did, right? Because there were no as fluent airplanes going from India to Britain. People who had read that book, people in power also, they would have thought of Indians as these deplorable brown skinned people who do nothing but eat all day and sleep under the sun, right? Okay, and they do no work, right? As lazy people, as stinking people, right? So then this helps the cause of the British, because then we become people who need to be salvaged, right? Then we become people who need to be helped out because we have nothing, right? We don't have any knowledge, we don't have any books of our own, we need to be saved, right? So then that plays into their hands. So this is where essentialism comes into being. Okay, then epidermalization. Now this whole idea about white skin, black skin, brown skin, uh, there's this phrase that goes, it's only inch deep, right? It's no misnomer here, because epidermalization, or the color of our skin, is essentially inch deep, and probably not even inch deep. Okay, if I ask you what do you think, how deep is the color of your skin? It's only, if you can Google it, 0.005 millimeter to 1.5 millimeter. That's not even scratching the surface of my skin. Okay, if I peel it 100 times, and as small peels as you can imagine, and only the topmost layer, that is called epidermis. Epidermis is the topmost layer of skin. Okay, and even in the topmost layer of skin, it's the very topmost layer that provides color. Okay, so epidermalization, so making everything about you, about your color. So if I make everything about Nelson Mandela, about his color, then I lose sight of any difference between Michael Jackson, Nelson Mandela, and Mike Tyson. If all of them are black and there's no difference, and I judge them only by the skin, by the color of their skin, then everybody is same, right? So this is basically epidermalization. Then you judge people by the epidermis of their skin. Okay, and the best example that I can provide for this is Volswenka's poem Telephone Conversation. I hope you've read the poem. If you haven't, do yourself a favor and read the poem. It's a very short poem, and it's a very deeply poignant poem. If you read the poem, there's a conversation between a prospective a person who wants to rent a flat, and the landlady, and and everything is well and good, and everything is right on track. But as soon as the person's race is revealed, or the color of their skin is revealed, the landlady wants to know how dark is the skin of the color of the skin, right? She keeps on insisting, the phrase is how dark or how light, right? So everything was well and good. She was okay, she was ready to give the flat to him. But as soon as she finds out that he's, a black person, she wants to know how black he is, right? Okay, it's a deeply touching, poignant poem. You should read it. So now everything about this prospective renter, right, tenant, becomes about the color of his skin, which is only skin deep, right? So this is an example of epidermalization, and this is Volsoinka's telephone conversation. So impact. So I've through these ideas, these are not just ideas; these are tools. Imagine them as AK-47 and swords and knives. So when you essentialize somebody, okay, or when you epidermalize somebody, okay, or when you make use the Manichean allegory, these are all ideas that have deep-seated, deep-reaching, far-reaching effects. Okay, and this has shaped how we are seen today, right? The position of India in the world, in the global, in the larger world, is shaped by these ideas. These very ideas. These are very powerful ideas, and if you can make somebody believe these ideas, you can change the course of history and the future. Okay, so these are very ideas that have far-reaching consequences. Okay, so these were the major key terms that I've discussed, and I've tried my best as to make you understand these rather at times obscure concepts. Okay, and you were watching. My name is Shivam Raj, and you were watching me on Study Capital's YouTube channel, and I help you prepare for UGC NET, and this may be also helpful for the CUT PG students. And please do download the app if you're preparing for UGC NET, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you for joining.